All right, terrific. Good evening. Welcome to the presentation regarding the component work group resolution coming up for your House of Delegates. I'm Dr. Todd Christie, Speaker of the House for the Michigan Dental Association. I want to go through what you're going to see here this evening regarding the resolution. We have presenters with us. We have Dr. Greg Maxon, who is the chairperson of the component work group. We also have Dr. Deb Peters, who is your immediate past president for the Michigan Dental Association. To let you all know, this is being recorded, so we will have this available. So when you want to go back and take notes and ask questions later, you can go through and you can find that it'll be on the House of Delegates webpage. I do want to kind of walk through a little bit just so you know for how our format will be. Dr. Peters will start off first. Deb will talk about the work group and the formation of it. Dr. Maxon will present on one portion of it regarding the component expectations. And then following that, if you have any questions that come out throughout the presentation, if you want to go through, you can click on the bottom where it says Q&A, and you can ask those questions in there. We'll probably hold the questions until the end of the presentation for both Drs. Maxon and Peters to answer those, because as we all know, if you're watching slides, as we click through, your question might be 2 slides later coming up. So we're going to follow those questions up at the end regarding both their presentations. So please watch for that. But it is my distinct honor to go through and turn over the microphone to Dr. Deb Peters. Deb.
Thank you, Dr. Christie. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. Partly, I just want to introduce Resolution 6, but really direct you to the background that's in it. This whole process and project started as my first meeting at the Michigan Dental Association when I was your president a year ago. And it is our tradition as board members to regularly communicate with assigned members within components, their component presidents. And the issue and the question came up from a component president back in June 2 years ago of some challenges that they were having, some questions about perhaps combining with another local component to share projects, to increase volunteerism, to help with some of the administrative duties. And the board at that time said, you know, that seems like a really relevant concern that could be looked at for a whole association, and what may be good for 2 groups maybe want to be appreciated amongst the rest of the Michigan Dental Association. So I appointed a work group, and we got started the following month. And in the ensuing 2 years, it's been a process of gathering data, personal interviews, reconvening, looking at surveys, looking at best practices. And most recently in this last year, boiling that all down for a full report, which you see as the background in Resolution 6, because the report was reported out to the Board of Trustees at their February board meeting with the recommendations accepted unanimously. But part of that is also looking at some governance changes. And so it's really vital, we felt, to give you the full flavor of what the component work group has done and accomplished. And for that, I'd like to introduce you to our chair, Dr. Greg Maxon, and he will go over the work group's process. Dr. Maxon.
Hi, everyone. So I am a general dentist in East Lansing, Michigan. I've been a member my whole career. And before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for coming and attending this webinar tonight. We're clearly in unprecedented times. And one of the things that I wanted us to share is during this uncertainty in times with lots of questions and stresses in our lives and in our careers with our practices during this pandemic, it's nice to know that the MDA has been a constant for us through all that. It's the very reason I'm a member and the very reason I'm involved. And I'm more confident as a dentist because of the MDA. Happy to do the work, to volunteer, and proud of the work we've done with this work group. One of the things that I've done over this shutdown while I've been at the stay-at-home is I've had a lot of quiet time to think, process, reflect. And I can say that one of the things we can count on is change. Whether it's change with our practices when we reopen or change with the MDA. And I look at change as an opportunity. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about what opportunities actually will exist when we reopen. And with this work group, we've taken the perspective of what opportunities are out there for us to improve the MDA, to improve component societies, and make our association, our organized dentistry stronger. One of the things I've thought about is, what am I going to write in the next chapter? The next chapters for my career. And it's in that spirit that I want you all to come to this webinar and think in terms of possibilities. That's how I kind of brought myself to this work group. Was we were tasked to, with a purpose of evaluate the existing structure, governance, and member service of the MDA component societies, identify challenges and propose options to address those challenges. And I read that as, where there are concerns or challenges, what possibilities are there? And I think it's a good way for us to think in terms of that with our practices when we reopen and with this work group. Michelle, if you could just put up the work group team. I want to just quickly run through and let everybody see who is on this team. If you could go to the component work group members, yep. So you may recognize some of the people in this work group. This is our team. Dr. Asano, Bergsma, Gurecki, Helenen, Lewis, Nelson, Peters, Simone, and Mrs. Barbacoling. They've done a lot of hard work. I'm very proud of them, and I appreciate the time and the effort that they've put in. Okay, Michelle, if you could go to the map. Just as a reminder, we have 26 component districts in the state. It's broken up into different regions based on geographic, basically. What we came to understand in our first early meetings, as we looked at other states and what other states are doing and what other state structures exist, we identified that Michigan is on the high end when it comes to the number of component societies. 26 is towards the high end. We have some states more. Many states are a little less, right down to some very simple states. And so we realized that each of these geographic regions may have some of the same challenges and then unique challenges. So in our early meetings, we decided that the best way to feel the pulse of what was going on around the state was to send a survey to all of the leadership of this 26 components. The survey, some of you may be familiar with, you may have seen that. We got feedback from most components, but not all. Once we got the feedback, we decided that those missing components that never responded, we called, we emailed, and we tried to seek out all the information so that we had the responses from 26 components. And that was one of the clues that some of the components are struggling. They don't have the volunteers they need, or they don't have people in the leadership places that are organized the way we need them to, or they need to be successful. So once we got the survey responses back, we came up with a rough draft or some tentative consistent concerns that were coming up throughout the state, and some proposals or ideas of how we may be able to offer some solutions to strengthen the component societies. After that survey, we decided, after we made our rough draft of challenges and some solutions, we then went back out, divided our work group up among the state areas, and we went back out and we reached back out to the leadership to discuss in more detail and dig deeper and to find out, are these challenges it? Are there more? And then to throw out some ideas and solutions to see, how do they think about, what do they think and feel about some of the things that they've heard with our work group? And then what other creative ideas might they have? Some people visited the districts, some people called, some people maybe did Zoom. My personal area was the UP. I took a visit and I visited all 5 districts in the UP, and I met with all 5 presidents of each district. And so once we gathered information from surveys, came up with a rough draft of challenges and solutions, met again with all the leadership of the districts, we then refined our lists. And so the next thing I want to do is go over what we've put together as what we feel is a great start and a foundation for component expectations. If you have looked through your delegate digest, there is a hyperlink for the component expectations. Maybe you've seen it, looked through it, maybe you haven't. So we're going to run through some of these. What we discovered was that components of varying sizes, varying numbers, varying areas in the state, one range of the leadership that we found is some or few people were volunteering to do work, all the way to some districts have a lot of volunteers to do work. Some districts even hire people outside of the volunteered members. And so we realized that not all districts are the same. And so we came up with some ideas that are the minimums, things that we feel a district needs to do in order to stay viable. Maybe not thrive, but it's a good foundation to be viable. And so I'm going to run through a few of these. We would like the components to be incorporated and file appropriate information through the state of Michigan and pay any fee that's appropriate. So we have a clear entity. Also, obtain and maintain the 501c status with the IRS. Have a unique federal identification number, again, to maintain an entity status. File the Form 990. Those things are some of the basics that we think need to be done in order to keep the identity of the district, to make things official, so to speak. There are some other things. We feel like there are administrative maintenance of files that should be done. There are processes for applications and waivers that should be done. There are financial records and an operating budget that needs to be prepared on a regular basis annually. And so those are other things that we felt should be minimum to keep and maintain a healthy district. Now, there are others that may not apply to many districts. Some of those others are districts that have employees. It would be appropriate to file the tax returns and W-2s and hand those out. It would be appropriate to make sure that we pay any independent contractors 1099s. It's appropriate to have casualty or property insurance if that is appropriate for a district, to have a general liability insurance. All districts are covered under the MDA's general liability. There may be a reason why more is needed, but at least we have something baseline through the MDA. Clearly that if liquor is involved, there needs to be certain things, liability policies covered. Workers' compensation, if there are employees with the district. And then all districts should have some idea of their vendor contracts and make sure that they're up to date. So these, again, aren't requirements. These are best practices guidelines for that. And there are two other areas we felt where other best practices fit in. Michelle, if you could scroll to the next segment. Yep, the governance. So some basic governance things for organization. We should have a bylaws, and there should be a written job description. It can be very simple. And then the board and the officers need to be elected according to the bylaws so that there is a system in place. And then it would be great that somebody informed the MDA. Simple stuff, but baseline stuff. I think policies need to be reviewed, record retention, conflict of interest, expense reimbursements, professional conduct, things like that I think once they're established, it's pretty cut and dry. There should be some board meetings. I'm not sure that every district has board meetings. I'm not sure. I know that some don't have enough numbers to even have a board meeting. There are some districts that have very few members. We've got one district with one member, and he is the board and he is the district. Have necessary committees, to share and delegate tasks. Board approved annual operating budget, some sort of financial review, check and balance, and then a way for us to be able to recruit and designate delegates for the MDA, House of Delegates and alternative delegates. It would be nice to have people contribute to the nominating committee, and also for having suggestions for MDA awards. And if there was an opportunity to do or participate in leadership development, that would be great. And then educate the volunteers on other duties as far as the districts go. And then Michelle, if you could go to the final component expectations section. Yep, membership. It would be great to have a membership plan where the members can work collaboratively with the MDA, that members can assess and give satisfaction review, that there can be a mechanism for welcoming new members into the district, hold one at least social event and at least a couple of CEs. Again, that's going to vary based on where you're at and how much you have as far as your membership goes. Communicate regularly with the members via some sort of a newsletter to make sure that there is a line of communication that can come through and people can be updated and informed, well informed when needed. And then to maintain some sort of a website or some electronic base so people always have a place to go otherwise. These again are best practices. Some of this may not exactly apply because of the size of the numbers in the districts, but these are all good baselines, and there are some basic entity minimums administratively we would like people to follow. Once we kind of had an idea of the component expectations, we realized that there are some things that we feel we need to do. And so we kind of had a mission. Michelle, if you could go into the 3 S's. We really worked at coming up with things and ways to help that would simplify stuff for districts, streamline systems for districts. And we hoped by doing these, we would be able to make things more sustainable, meaning things can carry on, rhythms can go, systems are in place, and now it's just a matter of new people plugged into simple systems to be able to keep it going and go well. Our hope isn't just to be a vital component, but our hope is to thrive. So yep, you can go ahead, Michelle. The last thing we did as a group was then come up with our creative ideas. And we talked and worked through this with the MDA. What can the MDA offer to support component districts in order to help them make their jobs simpler, streamline systems, and help make their districts more sustainable? So one of the things is to be able to establish a bylaws for component societies and to be able to customize them and have some sort of a template for this through the MDA. The MDA can clearly be a holding organization for us to be able to tweak things, but give us a base for that. The second thing would be to create and maintain some sort of a website, and the MDA through the ADA's template could do that for us. I heard a lot of feedback with different districts that would be a very nice thing to be able to offer, and the work would really be with the MDA being able to do that. Thirdly, to create and distribute a quarterly newsletter. That could happen a lot of different ways, but again, through the MDA could supply component content. The components could then give the MDA specifics that are unique to their area, people in their area, so we can customize it. The MDA can provide a template for a budget and financial management along with some sort of a manual and training. The MDA can continue to extend CERP recognition to component societies and provide annual listings of possible speakers. So we heard that a lot, that having the ability to know what to do and maintain it for CERP certification was important. And so streamlining that and helping out there was a big concern from some districts. The MDA can pilot live CE via the web component. In this pandemic, so many webinars are now available, and we've been able to really refine that as dentists. And so frankly, there's a lot of opportunities to do a lot of different things for CE through web component. The MDA would consider and would like to consider a leadership roadshow We'll get into that if we bring in a new person at some point into the MDA tasked with leading and connecting with the 26 components or however many we have, then to be able to have a leadership roadshow and literally visit and work with each of the components. MDA could offer to develop a process and procedure manual for components, develop a policy regarding responsibilities of both the MDA and component societies relative to the MDA support. Specific success measures can be defined for the component relations program as far as satisfaction surveys, participation, member feedback, cooperation, and those things. And then program-specific resources offered can be evaluated at regular intervals to allow the MDA components to communicate to improve. So 2 things that I wanted to kind of wrap up with are none of what we're suggesting is something that needs to be done. Some districts are thriving and doing well. Bravo, and we don't have to ask you, or you don't need to consider doing anything more. But maybe some of these ideas or support will help. And so you can take the MDA up on that offer. The other thing is then, find my notes here. This is an evolving process. If new ideas come up, if we find something's not working, then we certainly have the ability to change. And that is the constant we know, is that things will continue to change. Every so many years, it's good to review the component health, component systems, what we can do as times change. And so that is going to continue. We may find something doesn't work for one society and another it does. And so we maneuver accordingly. That's about it.
All right, terrific. Thank you, Dr. Maxson. And in our Q&A, and actually first thing I want to do is, I already have obviously introduced Drs. Maxson and Peters. On our call as well tonight, we do have our Executive Director from the Michigan Dental Association to help as an asset in answering questions. And the question that we had come up already was from Dr. Goodsill, and is in regards to how many districts check these boxes that Dr. Maxson was going through, and do we know? And to that end, Karen, if you could help us with an answer to that question.
Sure, I'd be happy to speak to that. Can you hear me, Dr. Christie? Nod
Yes.
your head, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I was not talking to myself. The really interesting thing is when we did the survey for the components, we got a good response and had someone responding from almost every component. And the surprising part was how many people answered the question with the choice, I don't know. So for example, a question, the component board meets regularly, pretty much everybody knew the answer to that question. And it is not always, the answer was not always yes. Of the 32 respondents, 22 said yes, the component board meets regularly. 10 said no, we really don't. When it comes to questions such as the component is a 501c3 tax-exempt organization, a full 1/3 of the participants on the survey said, I have no idea. Did they file the 990 every year? Similar number also doesn't know. In terms of do they actually plan for a budget and follow the best practices for managing money? I would say, that was one where we had a good solid 2/3 that said yes, but there were quite a few that are very kind of more catch as catch can when it comes to how they handle. So, and then when we get to things like communications, we obviously have a big divide because there are some component dental societies that have websites, they have regular e-communications, they may have a print newsletter or even a journal like West Michigan has. But then there are many where there is no publication at all. And so the only local news that they're getting are from informal conversations and communications between members. So we do have a good idea of where the gaps are. And we also know that some of the gaps are going to be very easy to close with just a little support for the components. And I think one of the things that Dr. Maxim said that really resonates is that this is not a one-size-fits-all support program for the components. We are going to be customizing and providing just the resources that the component particularly wants. So for example, if you don't want a Facebook page for your local dental society, we are not going to make you have one. Similarly, with the communications or the bylaws, things like that, I think, the priority will be what the local dental society wants. And so we're really quite excited to be able to make it easier for components to do what they need to do. So hopefully that's not more information than Dr. Goodsell really wanted. Thanks.
Can I add one other thing? And it's a little on a tangent, but one thing I didn't mention that there's been a lot of conversation about is whether and how this all started was because a district requested to combine with another district. And so that's always been on the table. And so that was explored also as a creative option. Are there districts that may be better served combining and sharing leadership and sharing support and sharing resources? And so that's part of what we're going to discuss when Deborah talks is those resolutions. But I wanted to also put out there that we spent a lot of time as a work group focused on that and where that might make sense and how can we help make that happen or support districts that would like to do something like that.
Terrific, thank you. I'm seeing here the question from Dr. Johnston. Dr. Maxon mentioned a traveling leadership program with the possibility of having an MDA employee in charge of this and that this may require a new hire. My question is, does the existing staff still have the capacity to do this? And does our budget require sunsetting some programs in order to initiate this program? I think I might bring on Ms. Burgess back again to help us with this answer.
Thank you. So I was a little bit too quick to mute myself, I guess. So, we're doing this program through existing staff resources because we are repurposing an existing position. However, I think Dr. Johnston has put his finger on something that it's definitely the case that the Committee on Finance and the Board of Trustees will be discussing timing on when it would be appropriate to bring on this new staff member. We certainly are at the MDA suffering not as much as our members, but we're seeing reduced revenues as a result of the pandemic. And so when it comes to the likelihood of being in a position to hire someone right away, I would just have to say I think this is one of those things where we were not planning to do it until August anyway, and I think that time will tell. But it is definitely a prioritization for the Board of Trustees to decide where to put the financial resources of the association. I think we are definitely committed to doing it at the right time. And we do have some bandwidth, to answer Dr. Johnston, we do have some bandwidth within existing staff to initiate some of this stuff. There may be some things that will have to be put on pause and not go forward as quickly if we don't have the dedicated staff resources. But it doesn't come to a stop if we don't hire somebody right away. Hope that answers this question.
Terrific, thank you, Karen. I see that we had the comment from Dr. Metz regarding a cloud program. And so as we know with this, we're recording this, but also we will note that Michelle Nichols-Cruz will have that in notes following up. So we have this content to bring forward to discuss later too. If there's any other questions right now. All right. So we'll move on to the next portion and our next presenter here, Dr. Deb Peters, immediate past president, Michigan Dental Association, to speak on that. Go ahead,
Great.
Deb.
Thank you, Todd. Let me bring up my screen because it's probably going to be easier to have the resolution in front of you. So the culmination of all this work, of course, was part of the board adopting the proposal, as you heard about, as Dr. Maxon went over in February, and then how it will be carried out. But the next step for the House of Delegates is also to have a process so that components can merge. Our current bylaws allow for a new component to be formed. And the last time that I remember seeing this is when Livingston component was formed. But we don't have a process within our bylaws that allow groups to come together. So you see the wording of it in front of you with the intent of what the work group was bringing forward. It was directed to the bylaws review, language review committee, and you see it there. Of course, it will take a 2/3 vote because it's a bylaws change for this year's House. I do want to remind all of you that bylaws changes become effective immediately upon adoption. And so as your background also emphasized, there are components, if you so choose, may consider moving forward here in our next year as a merged component, but you'd have to bring something to this year's House. So the language is in front of you. It's been approved by the bylaws review committee. The reason for the striking of the words in red is because previously in our bylaws, and as many of you know, a member can join any component, not one that's geographically bound to it. So that was old language that needed to be cleaned up. And then the new language is the last line at the bottom. So I don't want to go into over detail, just saying that is up for your consideration. If there's any questions.
Okay, let's take a look here. I know once a parliamentarian, always a parliamentarian. She can go into detail, folks. Trust me, I think we all know that. Let me jump back and see. I know we've got Dr. From Dr. Metz, but also with Marcy Dwyer. I think that was a good one. We'll have that so Michelle can have that in. Thank you for your feedback there, Marcy. I do need to jump back to a question that came up from Mike. I don't know which Mike this is. We have several in our House of Delegates. But with that, and this I think we'll direct back, I think anyone, whether it's Dr. Maxson or to Karen, I think we could start with, is this a statewide concern or a regional issue?
So just to clarify for Mike, I am not sure if he's asking a question related to component support or the desire for merger. Merger is what you're thinking? And so, you know, I would say that it occurs in pockets throughout the state. And, you know, so for some of the components where they're having difficulty managing the administrative responsibilities of being a component, perhaps are having difficulty recruiting leadership, which is a very common issue. In some of the less populous areas, you will see the same 3 dedicated volunteers taking turns being president. And so one of the things that we know is that with the component societies, the big barrier to merging with another society is, and we heard this over and over, I don't want to have to drive to go to a meeting, right? They want to maintain the ability to socialize and have continuing education at the local level in a convenient way without having to drive, especially in some of the remote areas where, you know, if a merger were to occur, it might be a 2-hour drive. So when we asked them, would it be more helpful if you could maintain your autonomy as, say, a branch of the component, so that you would only need one set of bylaws, one set of volunteers, and, you know, one 501c3 filing, 990 filing, and that kind of thing, but you could still have the support of the association in order to do social events and continuing education the same way you're doing them now. That really seemed to make a huge difference to some of the components. So personally, I don't think we'll see a giant rush for combining, but I think as they start to think about what the pros and cons and what the benefits might be, it would not be surprising to see components decide to do this or initiate discussions to do this at various places throughout the state. Certainly, there are some components that are very unlikely to want to merge with another one unless they were taking a small one in under their wing. So hopefully that answers the question. We don't expect to see a gigantic downsizing in the number of components across the entire state. So it would be more regional.
Terrific, thank you. Hopefully that answered the question. Are there any other questions you have for any of our presenters at this time? First, all right. The first one comes in from Dr. Richards with that one. So does a branch retain its vote in the House of Delegates? This is one question that did come up at the board meeting as well with this. So with that, if there is a merger of the components, the current way that the selection for delegates and for where the way we apportion delegates out would fall to the code or the formula that we have for where those delegates would go to. So not necessarily that delegate would stay with the component if there was the merger with that. It depends on the situation. We've looked and started targeting, and we can have more information coming forward at the House of Delegates to look at some of these as well. From some of those conversations that have been had in the past 6 months regarding specific components, we have looked at that. And so for Dr. Richards in this regard, the smaller components may not bring their delegate necessarily over. It just depends on the size. And so we'd be able to get that information for you on a more specific basis so you'd know. So let me go to the next one. Hopefully we've got there. All right, let me go to just take a look here at Dr. Gurecki's. To Michelle, myself, and Deb. Point of information question. The resolution is listed as number 8 in the body, but in the body of the resolution states number 6. I think we need to take a look at that. We'll get that cleaned up wherever that's at. Thank you to Dr. Gurecki for letting us know about that. We'll confirm that all up on there. Mike Dinkow here again. Good. And I think, yeah, to Dr. Dinkow asking that same, we still have the same total size of the House of Delegates, but just where the portions go to throughout the state based on the delegation is based on the membership within each component. And so we'll be able to take a look at that. There is information in your House manual regarding that, and it shows that each year. So you can find that in your House of Delegates manual that is located in the on the website. So you can find that in there, and there's a listing regarding how those are apportioned. Let's see, I'm going through here. So I've got a few to click through. And to Karen from Dr. Werski, Karen has mentioned a 501c3 on a couple of occasions, but I know we are a 501c6. Is this just a misspeak? The nod
Absolutely.
is
you guys are all 501c6s. We're 501c6s, and I don't know where my brain went for a moment, so I apologize. It is definitely 501c6 is what we're looking at.
Great, thank you. And I see from Dr. Metz as well, thank you for that. Let me go to, actually back up to Dr. Goodsell. A merger will entail some complexities, delegate sharing, but even more dollar sharing. Can two components draw up a merger virtually however they see fit, or will there be guidelines? For example, could the affiliate components submit separate dues? Karen, I think I see Deb's nodding her head. If Deb wants to, or Karen, if you want to take this one.
So we really do not have the ability to bill at 4 levels. We're a tripartite, and so the expectation is that the components that are merging would need to agree on the level of dues, and then they would probably be divided by how many people are in each branch. However, until we actually have it happen and we see what two components who wish to merge bring forward, certainly we would try to make whatever their preferences happen. But the expectation is that the two groups, or however many that were coming, because it might actually be 3 or more that are coming together, the expectation is that they would come to an agreement about leadership dues and those things that they have in common.
Okay, cool.
That would really be their decision.
Terrific, thank you. Let me jump back up here to Marcy Dwyer, where the MDA sharing resources among components has been a great assistance, and this resolution has moved this along further. Are there any ideas to share other technologies like MDA shares the ability to do Zoom meetings? items such as live streaming or technology for recoding presentations to host component online webinars. The nod is yes from Karen Burgess there, and I think you're right. I think these are great ideas. I know from a number of you was submitting ideas here. As we said, we're going to have these, writing these down, so we will have these in the pantheon of discussions that your MDA team will have. Karen?
Yeah, I think this will be evolving. You know, once we start to get the basics covered and we see how it is going, I think that it will be a collaborative effort that determines, you know, how we move forward after we start.
Terrific. Thank you, Karen. I always like when you see a head nod and we're agreeing and it's a good idea. Any other questions that we have? And we'll give Dr. Goodsell another moment just to see if he wants to get another comment in, but no, that's good. I appreciate, I just want to say thank you to all of you attending and checking in about your association and what is going on coming up for the House of Delegates. I was happy when I had the opportunity to go through and create this for having this evening and this time with you because from your board, and I had House members at our last meeting that felt this was an important issue to have discussion prior to the House of Delegates. And I think having this content available, so you want to go back through and watch this again online and see. And if you have further questions, reach out to myself, your governance manager, Michelle Nichols-Cruz. Obviously, Dr. Maxson, oh, he's going to thumbs up. He wants them to call us, not him. Yeah, oh, call him. Okay, good. But as well, my big thanks as well to Karen Burgess for her attendance this evening, helping us answer questions, to Michelle Nichols-Cruz, your governance manager, for her hard work in putting this together. But big props and thank you to Dr. Maxson and his entire work group for their work to get this completed and bring this to your house, and as well to Dr. Deb Peters for her presentation tonight as part of it. Again, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you all virtually and more so in person in the future, but we look forward to your House of Delegates coming up here in May. Thanks a lot and have a great night.